Welcome back to For the Home Cook. Of course, this show is all about saving money on our grocery bills as those budgets get tighter and we have to spend more and more on other things just besides groceries. So today I've got a few budget-friendly meals that we are going to make. I did another episode where we had 2 of those, which you can see as well. But this is all about getting the maximum amount of canned goods. So let's start with this one right here. So this is going to be a black bean soup. So this recipe is super, super easy. This is the only one in this series that is not shelf stable, which means we've got some stuff that you're going to have to pick up from the grocery store a day, the day of or the day before. But this is such a cost-effective meal that it's absolutely wonderful. So what I've gotten here is a little bit of, you can do olive oil or vegetable oil, whichever one. We're going to use, this is half of an onion. Now, I love onion, so the recipe calls for 1 whole onion. It can be a small, medium, large, whatever you're into. I love onion, so I'm cool with using the whole onion. If you're not, just go ahead and step back, maybe do half or whatever you're comfortable with. So we are going to saute these onions until, listen, I love onion. I love the flavor of onion. What we're doing right now is we're building a really good base for the soup that we're making. So I would literally cook these until they are caramelized. They're getting like the brown bits at the bottom of the pan, all of that. That's where I would live. If you don't like that, if you don't like a lot of onion flavor, maybe you just saute them until they are, just softened, and then you continue on. But I like onion, so I'm gonna let it go for just a little bit. So this recipe, like I said, is super simple. So we've got onions, we're gonna have some garlic, and then on top of that, we're gonna have some black beans, which I have drained and rinsed. We've got a can of green chilies and tomatoes, and then we've got some chicken broth, and then cilantro and lime. And so what I love about this is that you're gonna put all this in here, you're gonna build a really, really great base, you're gonna make a really great broth, you're gonna let it simmer, and then put it into your blender, and you're gonna blend it up. Now, if you make this and you look and you're like, okay, I like it as is before you put it in the blender, by all means, go ahead and do that. If you want to blend half of it and not the other half, because you want like the chunky black bean, green chili tomato feel to it, you can absolutely do that as well. The great thing about this recipe is that you can make it to however you like. So in terms of seasoning, there's not a whole lot of seasoning that we're gonna put in here. Well, it's not on the recipe to put, but I'm going to put a lot of seasoning in here. So I've got these onions going. Once you get to about the consistency that you want with your onions, minus about a minute or 2, you can, if you have fresh garlic, go ahead and add that in there. Now, of course, on a previous segment, we talked about doing things in bulk, and one of the things that I love doing in bulk is garlic. So if you have a Sam's Club membership or you know somebody who does, they have a huge bag of already peeled garlic. For about, it's under $6. You can take that and you can either use a mini chopper or do it by hand, which is crazy, terrible. But you can chop all of that up, put it into a freezer bag, flatten it out. You want it really, really thin, score it into little cubes, and then put it into the freezer. And that will last you probably, depending on how much you like garlic, a few months to even a year. So you can put that, I double bagged it because garlic smells. It'll make everything kind of smell like garlic. But you can do that, and then you can have garlic, fresh garlic, throughout the whole year. So if it were a recipe like this, then all you would have to do is just go get the garlic from the freezer, pinch off one of those little cubes, throw it in here, and then let it, because it's so thin, it's not going to take it long to defrost and then cook into what you're doing. All right, so these onions, they're at about what a typical recipe would be. Which is softened. So like I said, if you like onion, you can sit here and cook them for a little bit longer. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to that next step. All right, so from here, we've got a can of tomatoes and green chili. You can pick whatever spice that you want on this. If you don't like tomatoes, you can also just get some green chilies. If you don't like it all together, then just don't add it. We're gonna add that with the juice. Then I am also going to add 3 cans of no salt added black beans that I drained and I rinsed. And so I'm going to add those in there as well. Like I said, so we're building up our base. We're building up a really, really great flavor of base here, and then we put it into the blender. So I'm also going to add This is some reduced sodium chicken broth. It's about 1.5 cups to 2. Now that varies if you want a soup that is thicker or thinner. So what I normally do is add right about 1.5 cups and see where you're at. So this kind of almost covers all of our soup. So if you're looking at that and you're like, maybe I want a little bit more, this will thicken up a little bit because we're going to simmer it for about 10 minutes before we put it in the blender. So if you are looking at this, some of this moisture, some of this chicken broth will go away. So I'm just going to add, this is about 2 cups. I'm going to go ahead and add the whole thing in here. The great thing is if you get to the end of this and you don't like how much broth is in there, then when you're scooping this out to put it into your blender, just don't put as much liquid. And then you can do away with that as you will. So this recipe doesn't call for it, but anytime that I can add either some chicken bouillon or your caldo de pollo, any of that kind of stuff, it's going to add that flavor into there. If you have the cubes, you can either put them into some warm water or you can just throw them in there and mix everything up. Because I have reduced sodium and no salt added, obviously this is going to need a little bit of salt. You can also flavor this once it comes up to a boil and kind of taste the broth that you have made and then adjust according to that. It will get a little bit better once it simmers for that 10 minutes. But once you get this up to a simmer, go ahead and taste it, see where your flavorings and your seasonings are at, and then add accordingly. Some other things that I add into this recipe, I like to add cumin and I like to add chili powder. And those are just going to bring out the flavors of the black beans and your green chilies and tomatoes and all that kind of stuff. I like the feel of those spices within that, but you can add whatever you want. So we've got salt, pepper, and garlic in here. You can add your cumin and chili powder, whatever. Just taste the sauce and see what it needs. You're gonna know once you taste it kind of what it's lacking. I'm gonna add just a little bit more. And then we'll taste this once it comes up to a simmer. I'm gonna go ahead and put that on high. We'll let this go and then we'll taste here in just a sec. So once this comes up to a simmer, you're gonna wanna go for 10 minutes. What that's gonna do is it's gonna blend everything together. It's gonna cook the beans a little bit. It's gonna cook the vegetables, and it's gonna start building this really, really great broth, this great sauce that's really gonna round out the flavor. Like black beans, they don't have much of a flavor, so they're gonna adhere to whatever you're gonna put into this, which is why we build up that base with the onions and the garlic and all that kind of stuff really, really well. Once this goes for about 10 minutes, you're going to take it off the heat. You're gonna add one bunch of cilantro, and all I do is just break it and take the stems, throw those away. If you wanna sit there and take each piece of cilantro off, by all means go ahead. This is going into a blender. I don't care as much. If you have a really good blender, it's gonna tear through all of that anyway, and so you're just gonna get the flavor. If you're worried or if you don't have a blender, you can go ahead and take them off so you don't get those stems in there. I didn't have a problem with it, so I just put the whole thing in there. So you're gonna put a bunch of cilantro and then the juice of 2 limes. And then from there, get your blender out, go ahead and start scooping that into your blender. Now here's the thing, this is going to be hot. So if you're going to do it in the blender, do not fill the whole blender up and then put it on high. That is going to push the lid right off and you're probably gonna get injured. So I would say either let this cool down a little bit, or when you put it in your blender, that little dill on the top, kind of loosen that. Don't take it all the way off, but loosen it just a tad bit away from your face, and then it's going to allow some of that steam to get out instead of just being trapped in there, and then you start building pressure. So just a little bit of advice. I've done this before, and I have done that where it comes out of the blender. So once you blend it, this is what you're going to end up with. So you can see that it's very, very thin. You can see the bits of cilantro. When you taste it, you're gonna taste all of those great flavors. If you're looking at this, you're like, ooh, I don't like the consistency of that. That's perfectly fine. So go ahead and maybe only do half and then leave some of the black beans in there. Even if you wanted to not blend it at all, you could also just take a potato masher and come through here and kind of mash up these black beans and then just make it a better consistency where it's like, chunks of black bean and chunks of your vegetables instead of necessarily putting it to a blender. I would try it. Super affordable when we talk about black beans. So this whole recipe costs $7.31, and I have a pretty big bowl of it. So it's very, very cost effective. If for some reason you wanted to make it better, of course you could add some protein in there. If you want to add some shredded chicken or something like that, you could serve it with a side of, like a tortilla or something toasted, like some bread or some non-bread or whatever that you want to kind of complement that right there. But I love that as is. Really easy to heat up and take with you. A really great meal prep option that you can have right there. It doesn't take a whole lot of ingredients or a whole lot of time. All right, so while we wait for that, we're gonna go to this other recipe. So this is white chicken chili. So all of the stuff that you see up here is what we are adding into this pan. You can do it in a pan, you can do it in one of your cookers like this. I only had so many, so we're gonna go with this pan. All right, so what we've got here is we're basically going to add all of this into this pot and then let it go for about 20-25 minutes. So I've got a can of chicken, and if you don't want the water and the broth that's in here, you can go ahead and drain that off. I like it. I think that it adds to that chicken flavor without maybe having to go and get chicken broth. But we are also adding some chicken bouillon into that, so it's going to have that chicken flavor whether you keep that liquid or not. All right, so we've got some tomatoes and chilies. We've got a can of corn that we have drained. We've got 2 cans of, these are northern beans, so they're just like a white bean. If you don't like these for some reason, you can use kind of whatever bean that you want. When you look at white chicken chili, you want everything to kind of have that white or light colored type of thing. So, but at the same time, we're adding some stuff in here with some color. So if you don't like this type of bean, just get whatever you like. Beans are very, very affordable, really low cost. And so anytime that you can add them, and they have just a great amount of like fiber and other really, really great things. So if you can add beans into whatever recipe that you can, go ahead and do that. So now I've got this can of green enchilada sauce. Why I thought that was all going to come out at one time is beyond me, but here we go. So we got our beans, we've got our green chilies and tomatoes, we've got our corn, and then we have green enchilada sauce. You could also use like a salsa verde if you wanted to in here. You could use red if you just don't like green. That would be perfectly fine. And then, of course, a can of cream of chicken. Now this, once again, if you've seen the previous episode, cream of chicken kind of weirds me out. But you know what? It's got a lot of flavor. It's going to do some great things in here. If you don't like this, don't use it. Just use, a little bit more seasoning. But this is going to help also thicken it up as well as adding some of that flavor. Okay, so we're just going to mix all this together. And then for the seasoning. Now you've got some stuff in here that's already adding to your seasoning. You've got your cream of chicken. We've got the tomatoes and the chilies and stuff like that. But you can add, it doesn't really have any seasoning on the recipe, but use your best judgment. So whatever kind of chili seasoning that you would like, obviously it's probably going to need some salt and some pepper. I always love garlic. I put garlic in pretty much anything that I'm cooking. So you can do that. And then just kind of add whatever maybe you have in your cabinet. I don't know best advice, but look in your cabinet and see what you got. So chicken bouillon, it says 1 to 2 cubes. I did 1 to 2 teaspoons because it's cheaper to buy the powder than it was the cubes. If you have the cubes, you can always put those in some hot water to dissolve them and then add it in here as well. Now the only thing that we need left in here is going to be a little bit of water. So it calls for 2 cups. You can see we already have kind of a good amount of liquid going on here because we didn't drain the chicken. So I would say use your best judgment if you're looking at that and you're like, okay, I think that's a good consistency, then just leave it as is. The fact that you're going to cook it for about 20 to 25 minutes, means that you should probably put a little bit more liquid in there, just whatever evaporates, that you're not going to have stuff like sticking or getting dry or losing all the flavor that you're about to build into the soup. So I would add some more water. We're getting kind of to the top of the pan, so it needs a bigger pan, but you should add some water in here. It says 1 to 2 cups. Kind of use your best judgment on what that's going to look like. All right, our black bean soup, this is up to a simmer, so we're going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes. Once again, we'll take it off the heat. We'll add our cilantro, our lime. We'll let it cool. We'll put it in the blender, and then that one's good to go. In this one, we're going to add a little bit of water, and then we're going to bring this up to a simmer, a boil, put it down to a simmer, and then let it go for about 20 to 25 minutes. You're basically just cooking everything together. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, ooh, that's too much of X, Y, and Z, add less corn, add less of your tomato and green chili. Put your tomato and green chili into a mini chopper so that you can't really see it and it's not these chunky tomatoes, but it's more of like a sauce that you can add into there and it'll start dissolving into your water and your cream of chicken. So the cost on this one was about $8. So not terrible. You're going to make a lot with this one. So this is probably going to feed, if not for one night, a family of 4 or 5, but over the course of a few days, that's going to feed a good amount of people. Same thing with the black bean soup. This one does make a lot. And so it's really cost effective when we talk about the price. So the price on the black bean soup was $7.31. And you're going to make a lot with that. And you can add, if you want another can of black beans, you can, increase those numbers. You can double it if you want to. That way that you can have a lot more food. So these are the 2 recipes that we have. You can find those below. I'm going to continue to cook these meals on a budget. That way, as our budgets get a little bit tighter, we get into the season where we're having to buy more stuff, whether it's for holidays or gatherings or just end of the year, beginning of the year, school, whatever it may be. I know that our budgets are getting tight, and so these are a few recipes that are going to cost you probably under $10 for each of these and the ones we did before, but they're going to have a lot of flavor. They're going to have some shelf-stable items that are affordable, very cost-effective, and the ability to make a lot of food with not a whole lot of money. So thank you for joining us for the Home Cook, and we'll see you next time.